treat is an interview with Joe DeLamielleure, Buffalo Bills, number 68, part of the Electric Company, and a Football Hall of Famer right here at the Robert H. Jackson Center. And we'll also have a special guest, Fred Siegel. And both these guys are going to be introduced separately, and both of them are going to be introduced through a little bit of videography about what's going on here. Now, what's going on right now, obviously, this is a part and the concluding part of the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Resource Center. As we heard earlier today, what an incredible accomplishments have occurred here at the Resource Center, and the Robert H. Jackson Center is just delighted to be part of this process and to be able to be joining in this particular special celebration, which will be concluded here with this interview with Joe DeLamielleure. So if I could, without any further ado, we're going to dim the lights a little bit and watch a little bit of an introductory film on a guy named Joe DeLamielleure.
In 1969, Orenthal James Simpson slipped into jersey number 32, eyed the NFL record book, and proceeded to dominate a decade. He was a comet, swift, brilliant, and full of energy. He had speed and instincts beyond belief. They asked the Almighty to build a running back, and this was his prototype. Lou Saban recognized the gifts and tailored an offense to display them appropriately. Line coach Jim Ringo crafted an offensive front of Foley, Green, McKenzie, DeLamielleure, Montler, and the Electric Company was formed to turn loose the juice. A 1,000-yard season in 1972 whetted Simpson's appetite. A year later, he was insatiable. In just half a season, Simpson reached the rushing milestone that most use to measure a full campaign. The juice was now the focus of the pro football world. Suspense built as he bolted toward Jim Brown's seemingly unreachable record for yards gained rushing in a single season. Number 32 was the man, and 2,000 yards was the magic milestone. December 16th, 1973, a cruel wind whipped Shea Stadium. Snow spit from gray clouds, and temperatures tumbled into the icy digits. It was man against the elements and the odds. A single sentinel at the brink of immortality. There would be no coast-to-coast journeys this day. The yards came in icy chunks until Brown's record became a mere footnote, and O.J. moved into uncharted regions previously reserved for imagination.
And now it's for the 2,000, boys. O.J. running left. O.J. 5 more. There it is. They did it. I just wonder if the three of us at this moment fully realize what it is to watch O.J. Simpson run for 2,000 yards in one season.
In 1974, Simpson's rushing excellence landed Buffalo a playoff spot, their first in 8 years.
Let's go, offense! Take it in! Get in the end zone!
Buffalo squandered an early lead as Pittsburgh recovered to begin a march toward their first Super Bowl championship. For the Bills, a year of glory ended in pain. The following year, the juice helped avenge the loss to the world champions. but the Bills watched a 4-0 start fade to a finish out of the playoffs. A Monday night loss in Week 1 against Miami set the tone for an unfulfilling 1976 season. In 1977, O.J.'s memorable career in Buffalo came to a close.
They always know how to run block in the Big Ten, but few took it from college to the pros at guard like Joe DeLamielleure did for Michigan State, to the Buffalo Bills, and to the Cleveland Browns. Joe's presenter served on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Board of Selectors for 35 years. Welcome retired Buffalo News columnist Larry Felser.
Lovers of football, the best and brightest from the best game that was ever invented. Welcome to the blue-collar neighborhood of pro football. Joe DeLamielleure has been living in it since he first played with his high school squad of 13 players. His blue-collar credentials are impeccable. Born in Detroit, played college football in East Lansing, turned pro in Buffalo, and later labored in Cleveland. As he says, if Gary, Indiana had a pro football team, he'd have played for it. He's Mr. Middle America, Mr. Throwback, married to Mrs. Middle America, Jerry, with whom he used to walk to grade school every day of his early life. Parents of their own group, their own bunch, they found room for more, so they adopted. It's a family story with a happy beginning, a happy middle, and headed for a happy ending, so it won't become a made-for-TV movie. It isn't one of those heart-tugging stories which starts, if it hadn't been for football, there was no chance Joe D would have ended up in trouble, even if he had never heard of football. He would probably ended up on an assembly line at Ford or GM, giving the customer more than he paid for, caring for his family, and providing a happy life. But he did play football and played it so well that he ended up in another Rust Belt city, the symbol of Middle America, Canton, Ohio. When he was a rookie, drafted to give O.J. Simpson running room, he used to show up at the stadium with no one but the night watchman on duty. He'd start his workouts at about 7, break for lunch, and return, and then stay till about 5 or 6. His coach, Lou Saban, worried that he would overwork himself. For one of the few times in NFL history, a coach threw a player out of a weight room. By the end of his rookie season, Joe D had opened the hole through which Simpson ran to set the NFL's then all-time season rushing record. He was stuck with the great run blocker label for a number of years, but then he was traded to the Browns, as was just brought up, and joined the Cardiac Kids and became known as more than just a run blocker, as Brian Sipe and Cleveland led the NFL in passing. That didn't surprise Hall of Famer Jim Ringo, his line coach in Buffalo. He's the best pass blocker ever coached since his gym. Today, Joe looks just about as he did as a player. He has the classic guard's physique, or what a classic guard looked like 20 years ago anyway. It disguised his skills as an athlete. No one in the Buffalo organization could beat him at racquetball, unless they played him on Monday, the day after a game when every muscle in his body ached from complete effort. If there is an irony about Joe's NFL career, is it that for a couple of days, it looked as if it wouldn't start. In his rookie physical, a heart irregularity caused him to be kept idle for 24 hours or more while they retested him. The Bills' orthopedic surgeon warned him, there's a possibility he won't play again. But personally, I think you're going to be all right. The doctor had great insight. The only thing different about Joe's heart was that it came in size huge. Joe DeLamielleure, folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Joe, we saw an awful lot of highlights there in the film. We saw some awful nice words said by Larry Felser, and also talked principally about a work ethic. Talk about your family. You were born in Detroit, and talk about your mom, dad, and family.
Well, I was born in Detroit, and I said in my Hall of Fame speech, I'm the 9th of 10 children, and my dad went to 3rd grade, my mother went to 8th grade, so she's the brains of the operation. And he built a bar in Detroit, and we ran it. It was a family bar, a blue collar, like down in Lackawanna. That's what I'd say it'd be. And it was open from 7 in the morning till 2:30 at night, 7 days a week. Closed Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter. And we ran the bar, our family. That was it. We had, my dad said only relatives can touch money. He didn't trust anybody. So it was either one of my brothers or his brother. And when we got in 7th grade, the boys in our family, there were 5 and 5. My dad said, okay, now that you're in 7th grade, now you get to go work at the bar at 2:30 at night. So we went and cleaned the bar at 2:30 at night, come back at 5:30, wake him up, and he'd go to work. And that went on for 43 years. And it's still there. My nephews and nieces have it. But I said, my dad taught me how to work. My mother taught us teamwork. 10 kids, 1 bathroom, no lock. That's teamwork.
Detroit, were you destined to go to Michigan State?
Well, I wanted to go to, my dad told me, my dad looked just like Archie Bunker, exactly. And I always say this, if you took the F word out of his language, he'd be a mute. So, but not around women. He just could control himself. I don't know how he could do that, but around the boys, he was pretty bad. But he told me I could go to any school I wanted to. He didn't care. He really thought college was overrated. He said, you know, you got a bar here. What do you need a college for? And I said, Dad, I'm the only one to go to college, by the way. And I said, Dad, I'm getting a scholarship. You know, I think these guys want me to come to school. I actually went to the University of Miami, and I saw the Super Bowl with Joe Namath in it as a high school kid. That was my first plane ride. So I signed my letter of intent to go to Miami of Ohio. He said I could go anywhere. The weather was like 80. It was freezing in Detroit. So I'll try this. He ripped it up and said, 10 kids will never get to see you. He said, go to Michigan or Michigan State. I was Bo Schembechler's first recruit, so I wanted to go to Michigan. And he said, you can't go to Michigan. I can't pronounce that guy's name. Schembechler. Then I said, okay, I'm going to Notre Dame, good Catholic school. He said, you can't go there because Parsesian is not Catholic. He's a phony. So, okay. He said, you go to Michigan State because Duffy Doherty is Catholic. And that's how I went to Michigan State. After he said I could go anywhere I wanted. But that's how I ended up there.
So growing up in Detroit, of course, 2 professional teams there of note, the Tigers and the Lions. Who were your heroes growing up? Did you have sports heroes?
I didn't actually have sports heroes. My brothers were my heroes. They were older and they played at the high school, and I wanted to be like them. But I worshiped, you know, like, I couldn't wait to get the Free Press or the Detroit News in my hand to read it. And it's about the only thing I ever read. I remember I read my first book, Bronco. It was about in 8th grade. I didn't read anything other than sports page, but I became full of useless information, as my wife says.
Well, Bronco being Bronco Nagurski?
No, Bronco being a horse. But, so I just read, you know, then I got in high school, and all of a sudden, actually in 5th grade, teacher was throwing me the ball, and I was catching the ball real well. And the nun was watching me, one of the nuns, and she goes, you know, you're going to be special. You can do things that other kids can't do athletically. But she said, if you don't get your grades, you're not going to go anywhere. I got a brother who was a screw-off. And she goes, you're not like Tom, are you? I go, no, I'm not like Tom, sister. Well, you will go nowhere if you are. So, okay. So anyhow, she said, yeah, you're special, you do this. And I believed her. You know, I said, this nun must know something. So long story short, I end up playing in Buffalo, and I get an award in Appleton, Wisconsin for outstanding lineman. The guy comes up to me and says, you got to go to Racine, Wisconsin. That's the mother house of the Dominican nuns, and someone wants to see you. So I go there. I go to this banquet. I drive to Racine, Wisconsin. This nun is there, and she's got everything on buffalo time. And she said, you know, we pray for you all the time. And I've never had an injury. I have never missed a game. I never missed a practice. I missed nothing since I started playing football in 5th grade. And I believe in all my heart it's because of the nuns praying for me. No doubt. You can laugh, but there's absolutely no doubt about it. So that's why I had that confidence that somebody, a little angel was on my shoulder.
We're the same age, and one of the things when I think of Detroit, I certainly think of Thanksgiving Day, and I think of the Detroit Lions Green Bay Packers game, and we were reminiscing a little bit, and I don't want to probably, we'll kind of repeat this, but the game that was recently acknowledged was 1963 when the Lions, of course, played the Packers, and I think you were at that game.
Yeah, my dad would get 6 tickets from Stroh's Brewery. Anybody remember Stroh's beer? And we were closed Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. That was the 3 days my dad's bar was closed. And he said, look, we had a tradition, all the boys would go to the game. Then my mother and the girls, and as they got married, their husbands, would cook at the bar, and we'd have Thanksgiving dinner after the Lions game. So 1963, there were 4 lousy seats way up there and 2 really good seats, like right there. So my dad said, me and they always call me Joey, are going to sit in the good seats. You guys sit upstairs. So the Lions beat the heck out of the Packers. And Jim Ringo, ironically, was coaching and ended up coaching me 8 years. But I told my dad, as an 11-year-old kid, I was sitting there, I said, Dad, I want to play in this game someday. And he said, when you do, I'm going to be there. And he didn't say, yeah, sure, maybe. He didn't say anything. He said, when you do, I'll be there. 1978, 15 years later, we're playing the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day. I bought 100 tickets for my brothers and sisters and my wife's brothers and sisters, but my dad had a heart attack 2 weeks before and was in the hospital, so he couldn't watch the game, or he was laid up, he couldn't watch it. So I told Coach Ringo, who actually played in that game, I said, I want to play my butt off today, because my dad's going to be watching this on TV. I got to make him mention my name. It's hard to get an offensive lineman mentioned unless you hold somebody. So I said, I'm going to have a good game. Well, O.J. broke the record that game. He rushed for 273 yards, an NFL record. And after the game, it came out. I was like, hey, this is going to be pretty good. I'll go to the bar. They let me stay home over the weekend. I said, I'll go to the bar and then talk to my dad on the phone, blah, blah. And come out of the locker room, there he was. He was standing there. And I go, what are you doing? And he goes, you think I'd ever miss this? I told you I'd be here. He said, he never said a word about it, but he showed up that day. So that's pretty good. So it talks about commitment and, you know, what things are all about.
You don't see that from where I'm vantage point, but there's a tears in
Oh,
his
yeah.
eyes here. Where do I go from there? So you find yourself at Michigan State. You were Big Ten 3 years. Then really kind of an opportunity presented itself in the Senior Bowl, where your coach was somebody who became your friend.
Lou Saban was the coach of the Senior Bowl, and I remember weigh-in day. I was really concerned about this because I weighed 243. I could not get up, and even back then they weighed 260. So Ringo is the line coach here in Buffalo, and he practiced with us all week. So Friday's weigh-in, I was eating everything. I couldn't get my weight up. So I get on the scale, 243. Jim Ringo puts his foot on the back of the scale, 255. And he goes, perfect. He goes, I hope I see you in Buffalo. And they drafted me in the first round.
Well, talk about the draft. You didn't necessarily, when you got the phone call, you didn't necessarily, that
Well,
didn't
the
compute.
Steelers told me they were going to take me in the first round unless there was a player available, J.T. Thomas, and he was available. So, you know, they picked him in the first round. But it's not like it is now where everybody knows on ESPN. I had a class that day, and I told my wife, I said, look, if I got drafted, leave the blinds up and the door open, you know, to let me know, because I was going to be gone for 2 hours. So I drive home. Not only are the blinds down, the door is locked. So it's 1:30. It's like 1:30 in the afternoon. The draft started at 9 o'clock. So I'm not even getting drafted. What a bunch, you know, I can't believe it. The Steelers said they might draft me, and now I'm not even drafted at all. I walked into the door, the phone rings. She goes, first of all, I walk in the door, she says, you're not getting drafted. Nobody's even called. She's always been like that. So as soon as I walked in and shut the door, like I was really like, oh my God. The phone rings. We drafted you. I go, great. In the first round. Great. I hang it up. I go, I just got drafted by Pittsburgh. She goes, you better call your dad. So I call my dad. Got drafted by Pittsburgh. Oh, great. They got some balloons and stuff. He said, I'm going to send them up, put them in the sky at the bar. And next call is Ralph Wilson. Or Larry Felser called me, the guy who inducted me. He said, what do you think about playing in Buffalo? I go, Buffalo? Would I get traded? What happened? And he said, no, you were the last guy in the first round to get picked. I was the 26th pick. So that's how I ended up in Buffalo.
So the guy that calls you is?
The guy I inducted. I'm not really good friends with Larry. I respect Larry. Yeah. And everybody said, who's going to give your induction speech, you want to have, somebody close to you usually or something. But I have so many people close to me. I'm like my 2 college roommates and my 4 brothers, plus my brother-in-laws are all my buddies. I mean, we're real good friends. So if I ask one of them, the other 9 or 10 would hate in their guts. So I said, I'm going to ask somebody who, I heard that Felser was retiring from the Buffalo Evening News, and he has grandchildren and all this, and he spent a lot of time away from his family on a typewriter, not this thing. So I thought to myself, if I ever get in the Hall of Fame, I'm going to ask Felser, once I heard this, because then his grandchildren will see what he was doing all the time when he wasn't home. Right. So I thought, and I like Larry, I respect him as a writer, but we weren't real close friends. But I respect him because of his profession.
So that anonymous phone call that you got saying you've been drafted was really Ralph Wilson. What did you think when you finally recognized that you were going to Buffalo? What did Buffalo mean to you at the time? I
was happy because it was close to home. And then when I came to Buffalo, it was very similar. Really, if you close your eyes and you walk down Lackawanna, you think you're in Detroit. It's the same. Canton, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, they're all the same. So I really felt at home, and it was a great place.
So you walk in the locker room that really the first day and you start reading about the Bills. What kind of team did they have then?
They were just on the verge of getting good. Yeah. And O.J. was a young guy who he had gained 1,000 yards for the first time. And we had a great draft that year. We had Joe Ferguson and Paul Seymour, Merv Croker. We had like 7 rookies starting. And so it looked like, hey, we're going to be pretty good. And then we went 9-5, and then the next year we go into the playoffs. I'm thinking we're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. But, yeah, a lot tougher than that.
We saw some highlight films here of O.J.'s, the 1973 year particularly. Was it, you was the...
That was my rookie year.
That was your rookie year. So, first of all, how did they coin the term, the electric company?
There used to be a cartoon called The Electric Company. It was a cartoon. I don't know what it was about, but it wasn't about football. And the PR guy, Bud Dahlman, his kid said, hey, I got a great name, a nickname, The Electric Company. They turn loose the juice. That's how it came from, like a 9 or 10-year-old kid. And that's how it got stuck.
So your rookie year, and name the electric company. Refresh our recollection.
What's really kind of funny is the guys who are on the electric company, Paul Seymour and Reggie McKenzie, we're all from Detroit. And I played with Paul all through grade school, like we played against each other. And I knew Reggie. And then Foley, it was Reggie McKenzie and me at the guards, Mottler at center, Donnie Green, who's here this week. I'm going to see him tomorrow. And Reggie McKenzie, who I just talked to before when the phone rang. And we still stay in touch every day. I mean, not every week at least I talk to these guys.
Who was the center?
Mike Mottler. Okay. And he was from Columbus, Ohio, but he went to Colorado. It was all Big Ten guys. And what happens is when you're back then in the Big Ten, you're just hard-nosed core guys who run the ball all the time, not pass very often, weren't very rich. It was a blue-collar town. It was like Jamestown. I mean, the guys weren't rich, and they weren't going to get rich playing football. They knew that. We all had 2 jobs. I worked with the Erie County Sheriff's Department all the time I was up here. I graduated in criminal justice. Everybody had 2 jobs. It's not like it is now. And I was glad I played in that time, but I wish I had 1 year's checks from what these guys get. Because it's absolutely ridiculous what these guys make. And I'm preaching to everybody. I said this to Felser in 75 or 76. I said, when teacher, policemen, firemen, people who have real jobs, Army, Navy, real people are working. He said there's a lot of pressure on this game this week. We were playing someone. I said, you're kidding me. I said, there's no pressure on any of us. That's where the pressure is. on these people who go to work every single day and don't have money, or they have no health care. I knew this even back in the 74, 75 when I was a young kid, because I heard it my whole life, that you're privileged to play football. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And I've always felt that way. I actually thought I was stealing when they were paying me money. I said, you got to be joking. You're going to pay me to play? Nobody says go work football. They go, you want to play football? Yeah, I'll go play football. You don't get paid to play anything, do you? Except here in this country.
So at this 1973 year, when there's such a focus, such a media focus on Simpson's surge towards Brown's record, what you guys as a group, did you spend time together as a group?
Oh yeah, we talked about it all the time. Once he got 1,000 yards, we said he can get 2,000 because he got 1,007. We played 14 games. I told Reggie, even at Michigan, if we double it, it'll be 2,000. You know, he's an MSU. I'm an MSU. He's a U of M guy. We're teasing him. We said, yeah, we could do the same thing. We'll get 2,000, and we did. And it was, you know, it was just fun. It was a great time in our country, I think. It wasn't ESPN. It wasn't 24-hour news media getting blasted. I was telling Fred and Siegel and his parents that they can't even give you enough bad news by visually watching it. They got to print it across the bottom of the screen now, so you get even more bad news. It wasn't like that. It was just times are different, and it was fun. And we were the Buffalo team. We weren't a national team. We were the Buffalo Bills, and it was more localized, the teams.
As you were moving your way towards that, we saw the highlight game with the Jets. Weather was such. It was also Weeb Eubank's last game.
And Weeb Eubank, Jim Ringo, who lived here in Findlay, he lived over off, what was the lake? Is it Findlay Lake?
Findlay Lake,
yeah. He was our coach, and he had like a memory like an elephant, only about football. He said, he's telling us, it's 1973, he said, 1957, that little coach over there kicked my butt. Today we're going to kick his. It was all about him, and we were thinking, we're playing today, Coach. But he just wanted to even a score that happened in 1957.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to get 2,000 yards. So we ruined Weeb Eubank's day and made OJ's. And it was a unique time because nobody thought anybody, and they still haven't broke that record to this day. And it's funny, I always use a film of OJ when I go talking to kids because that's everything about your reputation. If I say to this class, or if you guys are kids, I'd say O.J. Simpson, and they'd all yell out murderer, right? But now, 20 years or 30 years ago, when you say O.J. Simpson, they say the greatest runner in the world. I said, learn a lesson from that your reputation is like China. If you, a piece of China, you drop it and it falls. Once it falls, it's broken, that's it. You can't pick it up and put it together again. And that's a American tragedy watching OJ. And I think everybody in the room gets that feeling like the greatest player to the biggest bum. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's how it should be, really.
How's that impacted you? I mean, you, Joe DeLamielleure, electric company, football Hall of Famer, and yet your reputation, Pro Bowl, 6-time Pro Bowl player, but it's still, you're kind of inextricably tied in with Simpson.
Yeah, I think about it a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but I often think of how different our life would be if OJ didn't do those things. Mm-hmm. We'd be like ESPN. They'd be talking about the electric company still to this day. They don't. It's just here in Buffalo, and you actually never see any highlights of OJ on any NFL films now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but in my opinion, that's how it should be. Mm-hmm. Because when something goes bad, that bad, then you don't give it any exposure.
What about some of the other players during that time period? Joe Ferguson.
Joe, I just talked to him. He's got cancer. He's whipping cancer. I got to say this. We practiced at Love Canal. Then they finally moved to Fredonia. Love Canal was Buffalo, Niagara. Mm-hmm. Jim Braxton, Bobby Chandler, Phil Dokes, 2 equipment men, Dan Jellick, Jerry Pat, they're all dead, and they died years ago of cancers. Now Joe Ferguson's got cancer. And I'm thinking to myself, how much water from Love Canal did we drink? And who knows? But, you know, being how it is, we'll never know the answer to that. But I find that very unusual that many players, and they died at a young age. So it kind of taught me a lesson, too. Appreciate every day.
Exactly.
because I know a lot of guys who are dead that I played with. And we're young men, aren't we?
We are.
57?
Yes, you and I are very young men.
But I mean,
Right,
you
guys?
think that every day.
We're almost identical. Talk to me about Reggie McKenzie. So just as a kid, you and I grew up, and you saw these pulling guards, number 63 and 64, Fuzzy Thurston and Jerry Kramer. Did you and Reggie kind of think you were emulating?
Yeah, we thought we were better than those guys because Ringo coached us. But we thought about it all the time. And the ironic thing of this whole thing is we grew up in Detroit together. And the really crazy is you're asking me this question, which I didn't think you did. I just talked to him when the phone rang.
Sorry.
Yeah, somebody bounced a check on him, and he wants me to get him. So I'm going to find that guy. He said, hey, that guy in Buffalo bounced a check on me. I said, I'll find him.
Yeah.
So he said, when you find him, you tell him I'm getting a lawyer. I said, should I do that or tell him you're coming after him? Getting a lawyer. So, but anyhow.
I'll give you my card.
But,
Put in for now I can put in
That's
for
right.
mileage.
but we've been friends for a long time, and Paul Seymour also. So it's really unique. It'd be like two guys playing in Jamestown, then going to the same pro team and playing for 10, 11 years together. It's odd. It's unusual.
What about Jim Braxton as a player?
The best player I've ever played with, ever. He played tight end at West Virginia. They moved him to fullback here. He could catch the ball. He could block like a guard, and he could run the ball. If O.J. wasn't on the team, he'd be probably a Hall of Famer because he was really good. And he died at an early age.
So when you think about that team, was this Lou Saban's sort of idea of to really load up? For example, Paul Seymour was a tackle.
Yeah.
He
He said he's
tight
going
end.
to run the ball, and we had Dennis Shaw. They got Fergie to play. Fergie was a quarterback. Could you imagine this, how fast the game would go? Ferguson threw 156 passes the first year, total. They do that in 2 games here. They want to get a lot of advertising or something for incomplete pass, go to the refrigerator. It was run. Actually, one time we played the Dolphins. I think between the two teams we had like maybe 30 passes, something like that. But they said, boy, the clock's going fast. I said, yeah, it is. It's only 10-3. The game usually ends at 3:30. And I was actually watching the clock on the stadium, saying, we're going to get out of here early today, boys. So I feel like you're really stealing.
Dolphins. You brought up the Dolphins. That's quite hits us home here.
Yeah, we're Owen. I just did a thing with Nick Bonacani. You're bringing all these things up. I was just with Nick Bonacani. He's a Hall of Fame guy, and he's bragging about his Super Bowl ring. I said, you should give me a little bit of that, too. You beat us so many times, you would have never got there without us, the Bills.
Weren't the Bills 0 for the decade?
0 for 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there the day when you actually won. It was the opening day.
Yeah, I got traded the next year they won.
Yeah. I know.
Seriously. But I went to Cleveland, and they had the same deal with the Steelers. They couldn't beat them, and we beat the Steelers.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't the same feeling. I wish I would have stayed.
Yeah.
I had a big mouth. When I got traded, I didn't like Chuck Knox, and he just brought in some characters that I didn't really like. And Ringo and Lou Saban were my coaches. They brought me in. So I wanted to leave. I didn't want to play for him. And I told Chuck, I said, Chuck Knox, I said, I can play for someone I don't like, but I can't play for someone I don't respect. So please just trade me. And finally they traded me. But
Your coaches, Lou Saban. Talk about Lou Saban.
he's still alive. I just saw him. And he's about 89. I wrote a book, and it came out. Just funny stories. It's funny stories. It's nothing serious, ladies. My daughter helped me write it. And she uses the word wonderful. I never used that word in my life. The day was wonderful. I said, it sounds like a wuss. Don't write that. It's in print. But anyhow, what was the question?
Lou Saban.
Oh, Lou Saban.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I got a hold of him, and I gave him the book, and he said, this whole league didn't turn out how I thought it would, Joe. It's not how I planned it. Because Lou Saban he coached with his heart. I loved him, and there isn't a player who played for him who didn't love him. But he just couldn't get along with Mr. Wilson. And so from that, he was the best coach I ever had. I really enjoyed playing for him.
And also Jim Ringo.
Jim Ringo was my line coach. I was in heaven with those guys. And how many people saw Field of Dreams? My wife always, when we saw that movie, she said, is it Buffalo? And she goes, no, it's Iowa. Because it was fun. It was like you get in heaven and when you play here. The young guys don't realize that if you have a bad day and you lose in Buffalo, these kids now, because they go to these gated communities where they live. We lived in a neighborhood. I was on a bowling team. And when you lost for the Buffalo Bills, it was like tearing your heart and soul. I didn't go out to restaurants. I didn't want to see anybody when we lost. I was embarrassed. And I don't know if they get that feeling like that anymore, because it's all big business. And it's pretty hard to be realistic when a kid like Plexico Burst, he said, big deal, I lost one game check, $117,000. One game check. Does he know how hard people work in places like Jamestown, New York for $117,000? And they just have absolutely no respect for the former players or what money really is, and it's really difficult. It's a hard, right now I'm really torn with the NFL to watch it. I like watching college, and I think it's a great game, but then I have problems with their coaches. I live in North Carolina, and South Carolina, the two highest paid positions in the state is Steve Spurrier and Tommy Bowden, who just quit. I think there's something wrong with that. When two college coaches make more than people who are performing brain surgery. I think it's totally out of hand. They could work for a heck of a lot less. And with this center, with people like Heritage Centers and how they have to scramble for money, and these kids are making $117,000, $200,000, $300,000 a week, give me a break. That's absolutely ridiculous. But that's me. And why I like Felser, if I was a sports reporter and some punk kid came up to me and said, I'm not talking to the press anymore, I'd say, what's your name? Terrell Owens? Okay, we're not talking to you, ever. And the whole media shut him off. He'd be done. But they won't do that. All they do is they got to take a stand one time, and you won't have this. And I like Marshall Lynch, but I knew he wasn't going to get in trouble, no matter what. If me or you hit somebody and drove away, where would we be? That's wrong. And I think the people are getting fed up with it.
Your book has a lot of interesting anecdotes and a couple which are funny stuff.
Yeah, it is fun. I tried to make the whole thing funny.
And it just, maybe you can, there's a couple here that you entitled this section, No, Wait, She is on Fire. It's a segment dealing with J.D.
Oh,
Hill.
J.D. Hill. We'd watch film, like the film would be coming, and then J.D. Hill, through the whole film, he'd go, no, wait, stop the film. We're looking for a big play of his. It wasn't a big play at all. His girlfriend sat in front of, like, high row. Back then they used hairspray. Her hair caught on fire. It was a big puff of smoke. Then the big puff of smoke goes in front of the thing. There it is. That's when her hair caught on fire. So then my favorite one of those is, we went in, how many people in here are Catholic? Good, the whole room is almost.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we had priests would come and say Mass before church, before the game. So we're playing New York, the Jets, and we got this little room. I mean, it is so confined, the priest can hardly move to come around the front of the altar and all that. So he's lighting the candles, blah, blah. The priest's going on. It's communion time. He walks around in front of his thing, body of Christ, body of Christ. All of a sudden, Lou Saban gets up off the bench and knocks him down and rolls him down. His vestment caught fire. And like it poof, went up, and the priest, he didn't even bat an eye. He just stood up. His vestments are singed. Body of Christ. Body of Christ. And then Saban, after the thing, Saban says, I heard of the burning sacrament, but this is ridiculous. Then another time we were playing, when things were really bad, we had lost a lot of games. We were playing the Dolphins. And how many people, the Jills, right? What do a professional team have Jills for? I could never figure that out. But the Jills run in front of the Buffalo Bills. Bob Kuchenberg, one of the Dolphins, reaches around and grabs one of the girl's butt. And the girl wheels, and it's Joe Devlin standing there. He didn't see Kuchenberg do this. Joe Devlin's our right tackle. The girl wheeled and nailed him in the nose. His nose is bleeding. This is before the game. And he's in the locker room with saying, Jim Ringo comes in. What happened to him? I said, Coach, you don't want to know. He said, what happened? I said, a Jill hit him in the nose. He just took off. So, those are the stories. My kids tell me, don't tell any of those stupid football stories. We were on the 20-yard line and OJ sprinted right. Just tell funny stories. Another story, you asked me about this. I never got hurt, so I went to a guy who was, his name is Dr. Saleh. He was a tester for the king of Saudi Arabia. He tests his food. If it was poison, he would have died. He escaped, and he came here, went to UB, had to start all over, got his degree as a doctor, fell in love with football, and started watching it. And then he met with me and Don Luce, and we talked about why there's so many injuries. He said there's so many injuries because what do you guys drink at halftime? All the guys who played sports in here, what do we drink? Coca-Cola and eat Hershey's. He said sugar will weaken you. So what you got to do is, we held apple in one hand like this, and then I tried to resist him, and he couldn't move my arm. But if he put tobacco or sugar there, my arm would go straight down. And so, okay, I'm going to take this to another degree. So I'd slice up apples and put them in my sock, and I played every game like that, with apples in my socks. So in 1992, I was playing arena ball. I'm 42 years old. I'm playing football. I turned my ankle a little, and I never got hurt, ever. So they said, let us tape your ankle. I said, I don't want to tape the ankle. I'm fine. I'll go out there. The trainer said, let me tape the ankle. So he pulls my sock off, and some apples fall out. Slices. And he goes, what is that? I said, you never know when you're going to get hungry out there. So I didn't want to explain it to him. But those are the stories I tell, just funny things.
Well, also, there's a guy named Tony Marchetti.
Oh, Tony was the equipment man. Yeah. Now, Wilson hired this guy. He was a bartender at Ace's Barbecue. That was his qualifications. You know, helmets, he didn't know how they fit. Just put it on and wear it. You know, whatever. And I could go on a whole book about Tony. I'll tell you one story. My daughter was 2, and I'd go to camp early all the time. And it was July 25th. She was 2. And I walked by this thing. He was like Danny DeVito on Cheers. He stood behind his cage and would throw racial slurs at all these guys all the time and be protected by the cage so he couldn't get them. So I walked by. He goes, what are you so sad about? I said, I'm not really sad. This is the only day I hate. I missed my daughter's birthday. He goes, come in the back. So he goes in the back room. He calls my daughter, gets my wife on the phone. Hey, get your daughter, Ellen. I want to talk to her. He gives her the phone. He sings happy birthday to her. This guy's like the meanest guy in the world. Happy birthday to you. And he hangs up the phone. He goes, if anybody ever hears about this, I'll kick your rear end. You know? So I told the story after he was dead. So just in case. But that's the stuff. Football is fun. And
well, he also kind of surprised you one time at the end of the camp of 1 year.
Oh yeah, 1 year. Saban used to make us run. So Marchetti get out no football equipment, no face mask, helmet, all this, and Saban pretend like he's all upset this time. Run down to the van and back. This is like a good quarter of a mile and back. Well, when you go down there, Marchetti's in full gear. You got to imagine this guy's like this big. We used to say, I can say this. We say if Marchetti had farted, he'd get sand in his shoes. He had the shortest legs of any man you've ever seen. And if you know those stalls when you walked in, like you walk in, nobody's under there. You open the door, Marchetti may be sitting there. His feet would be up like this. So he was that type of guy. So he was down there in full gear, beer and chicken wings. We couldn't come in until we had it all gone. So those times have changed, though. It's never like that. It's all big business and things. But
what's your highlight?
My highlight, one of them is what I did with Fred. Yep. Professionally, my first highlight ever was starting my first game as a rookie. I started the first game of my first season. And I did not think about, like, hey, boy, I'm really great. I think about, I'm the 9th of 10 kids. My mother had, really there's 12. She had 12 pregnancies in 15 years. And I'm the 9th one. And guess what? When my dad was 44 years old, when my dad had me, and I got a younger sister, I was thinking thoughts like, what was my dad thinking when he had me at 44? Holy crap, another kid. What am I going to do? And then 21 years later, I'm actually playing in professional football. And my mother, 12 pregnancies in 15 years, she had a stroke at 57. And she lived, but she had parrot speech and lived in a wheelchair, was handicapped. And I thought to myself, this could be their reward for, not me. Something, a diversion. Every week was a diversion for my family. Hey, he's playing, blah, blah. And that's my professional thing. Really, getting into the Hall of Fame was my after thing. But Diane Luce.
Before we get to Fred here, just a second,
Yeah.
because we'll set that up. Talk about just getting that phone call. You waited some time, and you clearly were on the
Yeah.
short list.
They brought 15 guys in, and they bring you to San Diego, or that's where they were going to announce the Hall of Fame. It's before the Super Bowl. They put you on a hotel, and they said, if we don't call you by 12 o'clock, you're not in. We can't call everybody, so if you don't get the call by 12 o'clock, you're not in. So this is my first time ever doing this, and, it was my 13th year of being eligible, and I got into these finals. So I tell my wife, look, if I don't get it by 12 o'clock, I'm not in. So about 10 after 12, I call her. I go, I guess I'm not in. She goes, no, they delayed it. It's delayed. They said it's delayed for 15 or 20 minutes. There's something wrong. So maybe you'll get in. I hung up the phone. Next call was the Hall of Fame, and I got in. And it's kind of funny. You guys believe in Lilydale? Yeah, we all do. Well, this is really weird. I signed my first contract on Friday the 13th, April 13th, 1973. And Harvey Johnson did not want me to sign that on Friday the 13th. He said, I'm very superstitious. There's 13 letters. No, it's Friday the 13th. I said, no. He said, it's Friday the 13th. I won't sign it. I'll put it the 14th. I go, no, sign it. There's 13 letters in my last name. It might be lucky. I signed it on Friday the 13th. Little did I know, this will freak you out. I played for 13 years. I was my 13th year of eligibility to be in the Hall of Fame. It came across the wire at 3:13. I was the 13th modern offensive lineman to go in the Hall of Fame. Then I started thinking of all the other 13s in my life, because then I started getting funny. My name is Joseph Michael. There's 13 letters in Joseph Michael. I wear a size 13. But Michigan State had 13 letters in it. And I could go on and on. 13 keeps coming up over and over in my life all the time. And that's pretty weird. And in the book I said, I listed 13 things, and my daughter says, oh my God, there's 13 things that you listed, ironically. So that's kind of strange.
I'm going to pause here because I know what Joe's can't wait to talk about the real highlight of his career, his professional career, and his opportunity. And I want to just take a pause because, as I said, we're going to introduce our next guest, and we're going to do that with a sense of videography. So turn around and take a look.
Fred Siegel is waiting and wondering, waiting to see whether an old friend of his, Bills Hall of Famer Joe DeLamielleure, is going to show up to run a race with him. Now, to find out just how Fred and Joe got to this point in time, we have to go back in time. Back to 1980 and here to what used to be UB's Rotary Field. Joe DeLamielleure was here that day as a Special Olympics volunteer, and Fred Siegel was here to run his first ever race. But once Fred hit the track, well, he was having a tough go of things.
This kid, Fred, I don't even know Fred's last name at that point, he wouldn't run. He was like kind of jogging, really kind of struggling through the mile.
And all of a sudden this large fellow jumps out of the stands and starts running with Fred.
I really didn't know who he was. I knew he was a volunteer.
And that's what I kept saying, come on Fred, you can finish. I'll never forget it, you'll finish. I never imagined that we'd ever meet again.
And although Joe didn't think much of his act of kindness, it sure had an impact on Fred.
It was Joe that came out of that stand that really motivated him. Once he found out he was a professional Bill, that sold Fred on running.
He just decided that he was going to run.
19-year-old Fred Siegel of New York.
And run Fred did. Just 4 years later, thanks to his newfound confidence and lots of practice, Fred won the gold medal in the mile at the International Special Olympics. In the years after that, Fred and Joe got on with their lives. Joe finished his career and wound up in the Football Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.
And Fred, well, he finished high school and then entered the workforce.
Well, the two of them must have really connected because Fred never stopped talking about Joe. For 24 years.
Then last November, something magical happened. Joe and Fred ran into each other at a fundraiser for the disabled at Ralph Wilson Stadium.
And to think that he was running still after all these years, I'm a real sap. I start crying. I cry very easily, and I got really emotional about it.
And it was at that fundraiser that Fred asked Joe if he'd run with him again, this time at the Heritage Center's annual fun run in the spring. Joe, who lives in North Carolina, told Fred he'd try to make it. And so that's how we found Fred recently, waiting and wondering whether his old friend Joe was going to show up for the race.
He was just hoping that Joe would really surprise him. And then coming down this morning, he said, wouldn't it be wonderful if Joe could just fly out of the sky and surprise me?
Hey, Fred, you ready to roll? How'd you know that, man?
And then, a quarter of a century after their first race, it was time for Joe and Fred to run together again.
25 years later.
And this time, their roles were reversed. It was Fred helping Joe to finish the race.
25 years later, I encouraged him, so we both help each other out in our career.
I just thank God that, you know, for a guy like Fred, I'm so thankful that I did make a difference in someone's life.
Unbelievable.
Words just can't explain it. My heart was just filled for Fred to think that something like this could happen to him again.
And if he didn't jump out of the stand like he did, I probably wouldn't accomplish what I did in my career, won the race, a lot of races, and win the gold medal. Maybe God wanted me to be successful in my career, thanks to Joe.
Scott Brown,
Now that's a Hall of Fame guy.
Channel 2 News, Buffalo.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Siegel.
Oops, I think I got to fix this.
It's not Jay Letterman, but it's
No.
close.
Yeah.
Yes, that'll do.
Well, Fred is a star.
Yes.
That's right. Just to set the scene, Joe, you're asked to go and attend a Special Olympics by when it originally occurred in...
Oh, when this really originally happened?
Yeah.
Diane Luce, who works at Heritage Centers. And then, lo and behold, we talk about Fred, and Diane Luce is a friend of ours. Her husband played hockey, and she does a lot of fundraising. And I had asked through the years, Kitty had sent me the paper with Fred Siegel in it, and I never really connected until I got in the Hall of Fame in 2003. Fred was working for Heritage where Diane Luce worked, and that's how we got together. And there are no accidents, because that's an incredible link right there. It's hard to believe that she'd be working there and Fred would be one of the clients there.
And so we go back to when it originally occurred, the first Special Olympics. You were asked as your rookie year or second year?
No, it was my rookie year. This was '79.
Right.
And I always say yes, even when we came here, Kitty and Bud. I didn't know what we were doing today. I just said, they said, you want to do something with Fred Siegel? I go, sure, whatever. Yeah. And whatever it is. I didn't know it was going to be like this. But they asked me if I'd be chairman of Special Olympics. And this is 1979. Nobody even knew what it was. And it was October when they asked me, and I believe it was May when we started the race. So when the May came, they said, the Bills called, and the secretary said, you know, you're doing that Special Olympics thing. My wife heard me kind of trying to get out of it. And I hung up the phone, and she goes, you idiot, you are going. When you give your word, you go. And this is really a neat thing that they're starting to do in this country, because it was 1979. So I went there, and that's when I met. I reluctantly went, and after I came home, I was so thankful that, because I saw Special Olympians for the first time and what they do and how much it means to these kids. And I'm one of 10, my wife's one of 8, and we all had all these children. There's not one special education or special needs child in our family. That's a lot of people to be thankful for. And when you can help somebody and you have the opportunity, it's really good.
What motivated you in 1979 to jump out of the stands?
My mother, even though she had a stroke, she'd always tell us, you can always be nice. Do something nice. So that could be something nice. I jumped over and just helped him. And I felt bad that he couldn't finish the mile. And, I thought if I just encourage him, maybe he'd finish it. And how long did it take you, Fred?
I don't remember the time.
It was pretty long.
It was pretty long.
Because, it was a long time, over 20 minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Then I get a letter 4 years later, and what was your time in the final, or when you won it?
I did 6 minutes and 7 seconds.
A mile. Now that is an accomplishment.
Yes.
You can talk about O.J. Simpson and everything, but O.J. had it from when he was a kid, and I had it from when I was a kid. He went from ground zero to the Empire State Building
Right.
in 4 years.
So Fred, do you recall when that 1979, when all of a sudden this rather significant large person starts running beside you?
Well, I didn't even know who it was till after the race. So he told me who he was. So maybe it was a blessing. He jumped out of the stands when he did.
Yeah. Did you guys talk about it on while he was? What was he saying to you while you were running?
He says, "Don't give up. You can finish the race," and it paid off.
Yeah.
That's why I listened to him.
And when you got done and he introduced himself as a football player, what did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was a big accomplishment. It met somebody important in my life to help me win, to finish the race.
So when you went back home that night, did you look up a little bit, learn a little bit more about this Joe DeLamielleure?
Yeah, I did. I asked my parents about him. They told me all about what he accomplished. I think that was great.
Did you follow his career?
Yes, I did. I kept on running and went down to internationals, won the gold medal.
Yeah. Did you find, what kind of inspiration did a Joe DeLamielleure mean to you, Fred?
It meant a lot to me to motivate me to finish that win and keep on training to go to internationals and win the gold medal. If he didn't come in my life, I probably wouldn't have accomplished win the gold medal and win all the races I did. So it was a blessing we met when we did.
And at some point, well after that particular event, you actually meet for the first time in maybe 25 years.
That's why we met after 25 years, so it was a blessing, so we could run again like we did 25 years ago. But this time, I helped him along the way to finish the race.
What did you tell him?
I told him, hey, you told me 25 years ago you can finish race. You can finish the race too.
And know what I was telling Fred? Instead of, come on, you can make it, I was going, come on, Fred, slow down.
He did slow down. I did slow down.
He did slow down, too.
Yes.
He could have buried me.
I could have, but I was nice.
You were nice. Well, that puts you in the same category, being nice to a football Hall of Famer. So that puts you in a special category, Fred.
Yes, it does.
So today, as you're sitting here, what do you feel your relationship is with a guy like Joe?
I think we're closer in friendship like we were 25 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what's next?
who knows? One day at a time.
Yeah. You gonna invite him up for your next race?
Yeah, if he wants to come for my next race, he's welcome. Because next year will be my 30th year in the Special Olympics. I started in 1979. Next year's number 30. It would be nice if he comes up and 30 years later and runs with me, like we did 25 years ago. Bring old memories.
I really want to do this, but if it's in May, I got to tell you this, Fred, because I'm doing this bicycle ride for an orphanage. My college roommate and I, we have an orphanage in Matamoros, Mexico, and we made a commitment that we're going to bicycle from East Lansing, Michigan to Matamoros, Mexico. So we're going to get a penny a mile. It's going to be 2,400 miles. And it's in May. So if you make it at the end of May, I'll pedal real fast and I'll try to make it. But if it's in the beginning, it's going to be tough.
I hope it's sometime in June, then I can.
Yeah, there you go.
Then we can go on the trek like we did before.
There
a
you
couple
go.
years ago.
And I'll be a lot lighter this time.
We'll see.
What does this all mean to you, Joe? Here we saw it on TV, on the video.
It's taught me a lesson for life, and my children, and forever, because we'll always have the DVD of this. And all my kids say, it's just basically, it's a story of you've done something nice for somebody that you didn't even know would affect their life, and then you find out 25 years later that you really made a difference. And it's not an accident. God puts people in people's lives for a reason. And you don't have to feel shy about saying that in a group like this. There's somebody greater than us. And we'll help a lot of people with Special Olympics by doing stories like this.
How interesting. The theme of the whole conference here today is the value of a single human being. And I think in both instances where your relationship with Joe and Joe's relationship with you certainly underscores all that.
Well, my wife always says Fred's done a lot more for me and our family than we've done for Fred.
That's
a lot
right.
more.
Yeah. And Fred, what's it mean to you?
It means a lot to have a friend like Joe. Doesn't matter how busy he is with his schedule, he always finds time for me.
Well, this is terrific. And
I got to tell you this, though,
Yes.
when we were playing Oakland,
Yes.
sometimes, Fred, I'm real superstitious, like Lilydale. The Bills are losing against Oakland, and Bud and Kitty wanted to leave a little early, so I said, Fred, get out of here. You're a dark cloud. You're bringing the Bills down. He left, and what happened?
And they won.
There we go. But Frank called me. I guess I was bad luck.
Maybe it was.
He was driving over the parking lot.
Yes. I had my father put the radio on so I can listen.
well, I don't know how. I'm moved just to have an opportunity to be in the presence of both of you. I'm moved by the story. I'm moved by the fact of the whole conference here and having it highlighted by having Fred and Joe, same place, same time, seeing the movie, seeing this connectiveness which occurred, and a connectiveness which this whole resource center for 50 years has been doing. I really can't thank you enough. And so on behalf of everybody, to Fred, to Joe, and to all the folks who have been here, I want to just a hearty thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a standing ovation.
Yes.
By the way, it's 3:13 right now. So I try to
3:13.
And I just want to make some concluding remarks, and I truly think that for all of us who've been here for the whole day, and even I'm sure some of you that have just joined us later in the day, I'm sorry to say, Joe, but this was truly a wonderful day for all of us. And I really think that it's really also amazing that it has ended with your just testimony, Joe and Fred, and the humor that contained in your history, in your life, Joe, and with the relationship that you've had, because we all know how much part of valuing one human being at a time is really appreciating how beautiful life is and how beautiful life can be when we just observe the fact that it can really go both ways. And I just want to read from an excerpt from a book that my friend Dr. DiCarlo gave me a few months ago to read because he thought I would be interested. And it's a novel that was put together a couple of years ago called A Thread of Grace by Mary Doria Russell. And the novel is placed in northwest North Italy around the time, the end of World War I, about 1943 to 1945, when, unbeknownst to me as well, it covers the fact that some of the Jewish people were really escaping the Nazis at Vence in France, and they actually would go over the Alps in Italy and trying to find some escape from the threats of the Nazis. Just to realize that back in Italy was frankly not really much easier either, but being caught into this incredible time when you had Nazis that were still advancing, you had some of the fascists that were still trying to control Italy at the point when Italy had given up, with Mussolini being set up in that Republic of Salò, it was called, basically an opportunity for the Nazis to kind of take over the government. And also, some of the, again, this battleground that was going on, and people like this, also Italian Jewish people, this Italian rabbi that was really caught in the midst of some immigrants coming in, and all of this world that was literally falling apart. And as his own family was being threatened, as his congregation was being threatened, and as he was seeing this world just falling apart, he just decided to kind of take a few minutes, sit down in his study, and just reflect on what was happening and begin to write the following, almost as a testament to himself and to his own children and his own family. And this is what he started writing. I studied Torah for many years. If I studied it alone, I might have come to believe that Torah does not teach us to understand God, but simply to belong to Him. Fortunately, we Jews have as our study partners the wise of all ages, sages who lived in the times of the Canaanites, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Hellenists, and the Romans. Jacopo is this Italian rabbi. Jacopo's grace drifts along the shelves of his library, Bibles in Hebrew and German, French and Italian. The many-volume Talmud with a centuries-long conversation among past rabbis. Commentaries by the various rabbis share a plank with Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and Plutarch. And he continues to write, the sages offer us a way to understand the terrible times when we are driven into exile, when we are beaten and enslaved, when we are killed with less thought than one would give the killing of a chicken. The Holy One has made us his partners, the sages teach. He gives us wheat, we make bread. He gives us grapes, we make wine. He gives us the world. We make of it what we will, all of us together. When the preponderance of human beings choose to act with justice and generosity and kindness, then learning and love and decency prevail. When the preponderance of human beings choose power, greed, and indifference to suffering, the world is filled with war, poverty, and cruelty. Bombs do not drop from God's hand. Triggers are not pulled by God's finger. Each of us chooses one by one, and God's eye does not turn from those who suffer or from those who inflict suffering. Our choices are weighed, and thus the nations are judged. And I think that really captures what we try to observe today from some of the heavy considerations of what happened back at the end of World War, from the role that Robert Jackson played at the Nuremberg trial and subsequently with the Brown against Board of Education, opening the landscape for human rights, for basic civil rights, eventually for rights for people with disabilities. Again, the observation on the Willowbrook condition, something that was totally unbeknownst to the majority of the population in the United States only, again, just 30-some years ago. Having Henry Wesley here to talk about his experience as a resident of a Willowbrook institution for 25-some years, and then being here in our community, one of our neighbors and one of our friends. And then having this wonderful testimonial from Joe DeLamielleure and Fred about their lives and the relationship and what valuing each other can contribute to each other, and as Joe said, to us as well. So it's been a great day. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and it's been a great 50 years for the Resource Center here, really a history not just to the organization, but of so many personal stories, so many lives of individuals, and we look forward to another 50 years of great things to come, helping each other and supporting each other. So thanks a lot for coming. We really appreciate it.